This time on Between the Wheels.
And when I first met you, I was immediately intimidated because your name's Attila, you're Hungarian descent, and you look like a more intimidating version of Julian from Trailer Park Boys.
A Camaro is a very sexy car.
But what's really intimidating is this car. This thing is an absolute beast.
Bought it in 1983 for $100 in a used washer and dryer.
He asked me questions like, is it fast?
You really don't have to say much.
Just enjoy the ride.
If Dominic Toretto is a real person, definitely be you.
So when I was 14, actually, I found this on Kijiji.
I was literally in the garage anywhere from 6 to 12 hours.
Decided to make a race car out of it. Let's see what happens here.
So the whole trip, I got pulled over 12 times.
So I'm standing here in Ottawa with Attila and his 1969 Camaro. And when I first met you, I was immediately intimidated because your name's Attila, you're Hungarian descent, and you look like a more intimidating version of Julian from Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah, I get a little bit of that.
But what's really intimidating is this car. This thing is an absolute beast. Tell me about this Camaro, man.
That's a restored 69 Camaro, and it's been modified for being a street strip machine, and it works very well at the drag strip for what it is.
Right, so you do it for a lot of racing and whatnot, and this is something that you didn't get somebody to do. This is something you worked on. There were elements where you had elements done by somebody else, but for the most part, you build the cars yourself. Maybe tell us about the restoration process.
Yeah, the car had a restoration started on it, and it was about halfway finished when I bought it. It was basically in pieces. I have a very good friend, Barry Keel, and he does my body work and paint. I did all the mechanical work on it, and I have a very good friend that I went to high school with that builds my engines, and it's a combination of us. And like I said, I put the car together, I did the upholstery, I did all the detail, the small stuff, and
wow.
My friend Peter, he did my motor, and Barry, he did the body and paint on the car. And
nice. So when you look for a car, because you were looking for this, we were talking about off camera, you've been looking for this car for a long time, because for the most part you have a lot of Beaumonts, and you've always been into those cars, but you always wanted a Camaro. What was it that you were looking for? What was the shape when you were first looking for it?
The car was rust-free. Mm-hmm. It came from an Arizona junkyard apparently back in the 90s, and the fellow I bought the car from, he started the restoration process, but he started a young family and he just couldn't finish the car.
Right. And with these kind of cars, I've been looking for a Nova for a while, and I just see the types of condition the cars are here in Ontario specifically, and usually they're just rotted through. It's the same thing with the Camaro. They're very similar vehicles.
Yeah.
It's hard to find a body like that. It's just funny to think that this car that's sat in a junkyard looks like this now. That blows me away.
Well, there's been many cars brought back to Canada from junkyards where they're rust-free, and
yeah.
Yes, rust can destroy a car, not just put holes in it, absolutely destroy it in our weather here in Canada.
And the structural integrity of these vehicles is so much that you really need it to be in good shape, because these vehicles, the unibodies, this one has frame connectors. I know you added them in. but
Yes.
normally your frame is pretty much part of the vehicle. Your structure is your rockers and your floor. Maybe talk about some of the restoration that you did, improvements that you did, things you added. What are some of the things you did?
Me and my son, we removed the rubber body mounts and we put the solid steel body mounts into the car. We put frame connectors in the car. It's got basically a drag race rear suspension from Calvert Racing, and it has Moroso trick front springs, and it has a set of TRZ front control arms and Willwood brakes. But it's a small block Chevy and a turbo 350, and
Right.
yeah, it does what it's supposed to do.
And I think that's the next thing we're gonna look at is the engine itself. So let's crack this thing open and take a look.
All right. Okay, the engine block is a Dart SHP block. It has an Eagle rotating assembly with Mowell pistons. The block is 30 over. It works out to 434 cubic inch.
Oh, wow.
It's got AFR 210 cylinder heads, a Motown single plane intake, and an 850 Proform carburetor, and full MSD ignition.
That's pretty cool. And a lot of people I've seen that have these cars, they either go with a 350 or 427, even 396. Why go with the 400? What was the idea with that?
I wanted an engine that would make power, but I wouldn't have to rev it past 6,000 RPM. And I shift the car at 6,000. By the time I shift it, it usually hits 6,200. It's a very streetable, very strong little motor. It propels the car very well.
Nice. And do you have a rev limiter for this?
Yes, the rev limiter is set at 6,700, and the motor has no problem revving that high, but it seems to peak power-wise at about 6,200 RPM.
Nice. That's pretty cool. And your radiator here, obviously that's not the stock radiator that you had. You probably changed it at some point?
Yes, I bought the radiator from Summit Racing. It's a DeWitt's aluminum rad, and I special ordered it powder-coated black because I didn't want it to look out of place. I wanted it to look more original, and it's got the
Right.
DeWitt's cooling fans on it also.
Well, that's kind of what gave it away for me was the dual fans. But next thing I want to talk about is the compression ratio. What compression ratio are you running on this?
The motor is 10.8 to 1 static compression, but it has enough bleed off with the camshaft that you could run super unleaded gas in it. When we go racing, I like to run 100 octane just to make sure I don't have any detonation. I don't want to break a piston ringland. If I drove it more on the street, I'd back the timing down just a little tiny bit and run regular 93 or 91 octane. It's fine with that. I did that for years with that motor also.
Very nice. So racing this, obviously, this was kind of created to be a drag car because you've done a lot of drag racing in the past, but you kept it streetable. How much adjustments do you have to go between the drag racing and just using it as a daily driver, I guess, or just driving it around?
If I was going to drive it a lot, like I said, I just back down the timing to run pump gas. But the little bit I do go into the donut shop or to a cruise night, I do a mixture with a little bit of avgas and a little bit of super unleaded, and I leave it all alone the way it is. All I do when I go to the track is put the drag slicks on the car.
Very cool. Nice. And that's the next thing I want to talk about. So what kind of times were you running this thing at?
The best the car's ever been is a 10.62 at 126 mile an hour with my son driving the car. And my son isn't quite as big a man as I am, so a little bit of a weight differential. I've gone a fastest of a 10.70 at a high 125 mile an hour.
Nice. That's pretty cool. So with all these specs, what is it rated as now in terms of horsepower and torque?
We had it on the dyno at International Dyno, and it made 535 horsepower to the rear wheel. And when we brought it down there, I'm friends with Mark Chartrand. We had a little side bet, and he won the bet. He found a little bit of power that I had missed, and we managed to tweak 18 more horsepower out of the car.
Nice.
So that was a happy day.
Every bit helps. And that's a pretty fast time you're getting. And what's really cool about this car is when I first saw this car, I saw it standing on two wheels. Tell me about that.
Yes, the car, because of the suspension in the car, the Calvert suspension, I can't say enough about it because the car is not cut in any way. Everything bolts into the car, and the car can pull the wheels anywhere from 4 inches off the ground to a foot in the air, depending on the traction and the day.
Oh shit. A foot in the air, that's pretty cool, man. I can't say I've seen that in person, so that's definitely really, really unique. We were talking about the interior earlier, and you had told me off camera that you actually did the upholstery yourself. Maybe talk about the interior and what you did there.
I've been playing with cars since the 80s, and I remember when the restoration craze started in the early 80s, and a company by the name of PUI was offering interior kits, and years ago I restored a 69 Malibu, and I learned how to do seats, and ever since I've been doing my own seats using the reproduction covers, and yeah, generally my work turns out pretty decent.
Yeah, it looks really good. You did an awesome job there. I would never know, you know what I mean? So what type of skill does it take to get good at something like that? Because I've seen people do their own seats and they just look awful a lot of the times. This is the first ones I've seen that in that good shape.
Well, the secret to putting seat covers on is you got to make them tight, and you got to have a good hand strength, and you got to have a good workbench to work on.
Okay.
And most upholstery guys have a real good grip because they're used to stretching stuff.
That's pretty cool. Well, I think that pretty much sums it up for this car. I think what we got to do is actually take it out, see what it could do, because I'm really curious of this. You've had quite the background with racing and building these cars, and this thing is pretty much built to perfection. Everybody has told me that. Would love to take it out and see what it looks like.
Yeah, well, we'll go from here and go for a ride.
Yeah, man, let's do it.
Said about the small block Chevy, it really revs up fast in first gear.
Yeah, holy crap.
Usually when we go to the track, I always beat everybody out of the hole. I cut a good light and the motor really comes to life quick.
Yeah, man.
Doesn't mean you win the race, but at least you can win the pictures at the starting line.
Yeah,
it's pretty impressive.
So you have a turbo 350 in here, right?
Yes, it's a TCI full competition turbo 350.
Now, when I was talking with you off camera, some mutual friends of ours get the 400, and you said not to get the 400. You actually prefer the 350. Why is that?
Because of the rotating mass and the power level we're at. We really do not need the extra weight of a turbo 400, and the internals in a turbo 400 have to change directions from first to second gear, and that's a common problem with them braking.
Right.
I ran turbo 400 years ago and I broke a couple of them, and never ever had a problem with the turbo 350.
So you still shift manually, even though it's an automatic?
Yes, it's a full competition, full manual transmission.
Right, that's very cool.
It will not shift by itself.
No.
It's got a factory horseshoe shifter that has a Thompson Performance detent plate in it, and it allows me to shift the transmission without missing a gear or over shifting the transmission.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Nice.
I have an electric fuel pump on the car. I trigger the MSD ignition with one of them, and I also have the electric fans hooked up on a switch, and I have the electric water pump hooked to a switch.
Nice.
That way there, if we're at the track and the car is shut off, I can still run the cooling system on the car to cool it down between rounds.
Right on. Nice.
That wasn't even putting it to the floor.
It's got good grip though with those wheels in the back. What do you got in back there?
It's got a set of Nitto drag radial tires on it right now. The best I've had on the car to my liking is the M&H drag radial, but at the time I had the Nittos offered to me, so I bought a set to give them a try. Oh, look at this. We have Officer Stenenko up here. What's going on?
What's going on? They know they hear us coming?
Maybe they knew you were coming over today.
Maybe. No, they're going to the woods. That's usually a bad sign. Yeah, and obviously the thing is we can't give her like crazy. Here we're on a regular road, so. But you take this to the track often because that's the fun and responsible thing to do. And that's really where you get all the performance out of it.
Yeah, it needs to hook up. The car needs to get traction. And I'm a little too old to be acting like a teenager, but...
Well, that's the thing I was going to say. Like, what is it? You've been driving cars like this your whole life. Like, what is it like when you drive something like this?
It's bringing back good times.
Yeah.
Makes your heart pound. Gives you a little bit of adrenaline. Makes you feel young again.
Yeah. There's not much of that these days. It's kind of limited to what you can do and whatnot. So that's definitely something I've seen a lot with people mentioning, is just getting in the old cars and being able to have some fun.
Well, that's the
makes
biggest,
you feel alive, right?
That's the big thing to it. It pulls on your heartstrings. That's what life's all about. Reliving your life in your mind, achieving the things maybe you couldn't do when you were young. Now that you're older and financially secure, you can enjoy some of the dreams you had in a younger life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a nice drive, man. I'm just like really enjoying it. You know, I usually ask a lot of questions, but I'm loving it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, another thing I didn't want to do to the car was put a roll cage in it. It's a street car. It's not a race car, and I don't want to take away from the car itself.
In a lot of cases, actually, the roll cage is a topic of conversation. People think you put it in for safety. But the thing is, it's actually more dangerous if you're not wearing a helmet, because you can smash your head into it and die, which has happened to a lot of people.
Yes, that's why the insurance companies don't want a roll cage in a street car.
Yeah, I was actually surprised this one doesn't have like the pillar that goes up here with the little window.
Yeah, they did that in '67. That's how you can tell the Camaros apart. The '67 has the window.
Oh, okay.
And then the '68 doesn't. And then in '69 they changed the shape of the fenders and stuff.
Right.
Me and my son, we were going out Friday nights to Capital City for the 8th mile drag races, and we were using the old Beaumont years ago with this engine in it. And when I found the Camaro, I wasn't looking for it. I was just on Marketplace and on Kijiji, and I found the car, and next thing you know, I owned the car.
That's pretty cool. And how is it for you to have the Camaro versus the Beaumonts, which are such different vehicles?
As far as driving a car, a Camaro is a very sexy car. A lot of people really like them, but the reality to drive it as a car without looking at it, the Beaumont's a much nicer driving car because of the four coil spring suspension. You'd laugh that four-door Beaumont's actually quieter inside than this car. It's got a bigger motor and a bigger exhaust.
Yeah, so you actually have a four-door Beaumont with a roof rack, and this thing is crazy fast. That's another car we're gonna do on the show.
Yeah, it's powered by a 540 big block Chevrolet, turbo 350, Dana 60 rear end.
Oh wow, hardcore. I think people will want to see that one next. You guys let us know what you think of that. And then you got your other Beaumont, which is your first car. Well, you got lots of them, but...
Yeah, I have the first car I bought just before I graduated high school. It's a 1968 Beaumont SD 396, which in 1968 they made, I believe, 680 of those cars, total production.
Well, thanks Attila for being on the show. It was awesome giving us a tour of your car. And this is one badass ride. Anybody's on the show, gotta get a hat.
Oh,
Here's
thank
a
you very much.
hat.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show, man. And we'll be seeing some of your Beaumonts on the show in the future. So you got quite a few of them.
We got some episodes to make.
That's right. All right, we'll see you guys next time.
Next time on Between the Wheels.
You know when you watch Street Outlaws? I did like these guys. Ran on the street. I went there, made noise, and went home. You'll hear it when I started and drive it in. You'll understand and your hair will stand up. He asked me questions like, is it fast?
Yeah.
Is it bear shit in woods?